Good morning to all. In today's class, we will discuss how to initialize an object. This is very important concept in Java. So after defining the class, we have to create objects for that class. Now in this class, we will discuss how to initialize an object after defining the class. Okay. Now here, already explained in the last class. So initialization of an object is nothing but initialization of the instance variables. You remember this point. Okay. So initialization of instance variables is nothing but initialization of an object. So already explained in the last class. So the difference between instance variables and static variables. So class consists of two parts, state part and behavior part. So again in the state part, we have two types of variables. They are instance variables and static variables. But inside each object, only instance variables are stored. Static variables are not stored inside each object. So you remember this point. This is very important. So only instance variables of the state part are stored inside each and every object of that class. This is important point to remember. Next, so there are different ways to initialize the objects. There are 8 ways to initialize an object. So first one is using default constructor. This concept already explained. See, first 3 are the different types of constructors. We have 3 types of constructors. They are default constructor, that is compiler generated constructor. Next one is user defined NOR constructor and user defined parameterized constructor. So first we will discuss these 3 concepts. Okay, these are the different types of constructors and these 3 constructors are used to initialize the objects of a class. Now what is default constructor? Already explained this program in the last class. We will revise once, then we will go to the program 2. So what is default constructor means? Already explained. I will explain this program. Here we have one class student. Inside this class we have state part. State part is nothing but variables. This is called state part. So here already explained state part consists of 2 types of variables. They are instance variables and static variables. So how do we differentiate instance variables and static variables is? So instance variables and static variables both are defined or declared inside the class and outside the method or constructor or block. So that's why I call these 3 variables as either instance variables or static variables. Now the difference between instance variables and static variables is instance variables are declared inside the class and outside the method or block or constructor and are not declared with static keyword. See, these 3 variables are not declared with static keyword. That's why these 3 variables are called instance variables. First identify the instance variables of a class. After that only instance variables are stored inside each object of this class. This is very important. Okay. And now after that, after identifying these instance variables, next important point is, so here I have taken 2 classes. Inside the second class I have put the main method. Okay. Next one more important point is, when you compile this program, first the compiler will check the student class whether any constructor is written by the programmer or not. But inside the student class, there is no constructor. Means the programmer has not written any constructor. Okay. How do we know the constructor is? Constructor name and class name must be same and there is no return type for the constructor. Okay. These are the 2 important points regarding constructor. So first when you compile this program, the compiler will check whether any constructor is provided by the programmer or not. But if you see this class, there is no constructor which is provided by the programmer. So in this case, the compiler will provide default constructor to this class. means this is the code which is provided by the compiler during the compilation time. So what is the default constructor? So using this default constructor, the instance variables are initialized with default values based on the data type. You know the default values based on the data type, already explained clearly. So this is the compiler, this is the constructor which is provided by the compiler. That's why this constructor is called default constructor. So when this default constructor is provided by the compiler is when there is no constructor in this class. If there is at least one constructor which is provided by the programmer, then in that case the compiler will not provide the default constructor. You remember this point. If there is no constructor in the class, then only the compiler will provide default constructor. So here compiler will check whether any constructor is there or not in this class, but it finds there is no constructor. That's why the compiler will add this code to this class. What is this code? This is the default constructor which is no arg constructor, and inside the constructor only the instance variables of that class are initialized with default values. Already explained, roll number, marks and name are the instance variables because they are not declared with static keyword. So these three instance variables are initialized with default values based on the data type. So here roll number is declared with int data type. That's why it is initialized with 0. Why? Because 0 is the default value for all the 4 integer data types, and marks declared with float. That's why 0.0f. Actually here we have to write f. So marks 0.0f. It is the default value for floating point data types. Next, name is equal to null. Why? Because so name is the reference variable which is declared with string data type, and you know all the reference variables are the default value for all reference variables is null. That's why name is assigned with null. These are the default values based on the data type. Okay, this is the constructor which is provided by the compiler to this class during the compilation time. So this constructor is called default constructor. Okay, now coming to this point, this is very, very important for this statement. So here in this statement, we are creating the object for student class. So here we have defined all the programs are in the same way. That's why once you understand the concept in the next programs, I will explain only the new points. I will not explain all these. So here student is the class. For this student class, I have to create objects. Why objects are created for student class is using those objects only we can access the members of this student class. Or the other way is to access the members of the student class, we need to create objects for student class. Without creating objects for student class, we can't access the members of the student class. Okay, so that's why we have to create objects for student class. Voice? Suhas? 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 What happened?
Ma'am, we can hear you, ma'am.
Okay, is it audible, Amma?
Yes, ma'am.
Huh?
Yes, ma'am. Audible, ma'am.
Is it clearly audible?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So here I have defined one class student. After defining the class student, we need to create objects for that class. Okay. So with those objects only I can access the members of this class. That's why after defining the class, we need to create objects for that class. So where do we create objects for student classes? Inside another class. I am taking one more class. Inside the main method of another class, I am creating the objects for student class. So how do I create objects for student classes? Student S1 is equal to new student student S2 is equal to new student. Inside the main method only, we have to create the objects. Reason is there, I will explain later. So now remember, inside the main method of the same class or in another class also, we can create the objects for student class. So here how we are creating objects for student class is using this syntax. Student S1 is equal to new student. This is one object for student class, and student S2 is equal to new student. This is another object for student class. Okay. So here, see, understand this statement. This is very, very important. Whenever this statement is getting executed by JVM, now when you execute this program, JVM will invoke the main method first. So inside the main method, we have this statement. So whenever this statement is getting executed by the JVM, see the right hand side part. This is called constructor. So student parenthesis, this is called constructor. So here the JVM will go to this student class and it will execute this constructor, that is student constructor. That's why from this statement, okay, the JVM will go from this statement to which class? Student class, and it will find and it will search for the matching constructor. So this constructor is the matching constructor and it is already provided by the compiler. That's why, understand this statement. Whenever this statement is getting executed, from this the JVM will go to student class and identify the matching constructor and it will execute this constructor. That's why from this statement it will go to this class, student class, and it will search for the matching constructor. So here it found the matching constructor. This is the matching constructor. That's why this code will be executed. Okay. So when this code is executed, what will happen is inside the memory, here student S1 is equal to new student means student object is created. So here understand the memory. So here right hand side, take right hand side part, new student means new is the operator which will allocate the memory dynamically for student object. Okay. After creating the object, the address of that object is assigned to this reference variable S1. Here I will show you. So student class object is created and each and every object has unique address in Java, and let us take the address of this object is 100 and that is assigned to the reference variable S1. Okay. After that inside each object of student class, only instance variables of that class are stored. Already explained, roll number, marks and name are instance variables for student class. That's why only instance variables are stored inside student object. That's why roll number, marks and name are stored inside the student object. After that, how these values are assigned to these variables is already explained. No? This is student constructor. From this it will go to this class and this is the matching constructor and this is executed. So what is there inside this constructor? Roll number is assigned with 0, marks are assigned with 0.0 and name is assigned with null. So these values are assigned to the instance variables roll number, marks and name using this constructor. That's why inside the object roll number, marks and name are assigned with 0, 0.0 and null. Because inside the default constructor these values are assigned. That's why the student constructor is executed and these values are assigned to these instance variables. So this is the memory for student class object. Okay. Whenever this statement is executed by JVM, inside the memory the object is created like this. So the object is created and the address is stored in S1, and inside that object instance variables are stored and the student constructor is executed and these values are assigned using constructor. Okay. If you understand this one, in the same way the remaining programs. Next, when you take student S2 is equal to new student, again the same concept. No, again from this it will go to the student class JVM and it will execute this constructor. Again, all the variables are assigned these default values for the second object also. Now we will see the memory part. And now again one more object is created with address 200 and that address is stored in the reference variable S2. Now link is created between these two. After that, inside the student object, the instance variables are stored and these are assigned with default values because default constructor is executed in this case also. That's why you will get default values. So if you observe this statement and this statement, if you see the memory and that is objects. So if you see S1 object and S2 object, only default values are assigned to the instance variables of this object and this object also. This is the first program on default constructor, that is compiler generated constructor. This constructor we have not provided by the programmer. Who provided this constructor is the compiler. That's why the default constructor. Okay. If you observe, if you understand this program, next programs are very, very easy. Next, what is the second one? Second one is user defined NOR constructor. Means here the programmer is writing the constructor. Okay, with no arguments. Now I will show you the program. Memory we will see later. First, try to understand the program on user defined NOR constructor. These 8 programs are very, very important to understand any Java program. So here this is the program on user defined NOR constructor. See, he same class student. So 3 instance variables are there. Okay. After that, see here this is the constructor which is provided by the programmer. It is called user defined NOR constructor. Why? Because here there are no arguments in this constructor. Okay. Now here this is called user defined NOR constructor because it is provided by the programmer. So in this case the compiler will not provide a default constructor. Why? Because the rule is that if the class consists of at least one constructor, then the compiler will not provide default constructor. Okay. And now here this is the constructor which is provided by the programmer. That's why this constructor is called user defined NOR constructor. How do we identify whether it is a constructor or method? Is the name of the constructor must be same as the name of the class, and constructors do not have return type. See, there is no return type with or without parameters. But here this is the constructor without parameters. That's why it is called NOR constructor. And this is provided by the programmer. That's why it is called user defined. So this constructor is user defined NOR constructor. So here the main purpose of any constructor is to initialize the instance variables. So what are the instance variables in this class? Roll number, marks and name are instance variables. So the constructor main purpose is to initialize the instance variables. That's why we have to take the instance variables and initialize these 3 instance variables with your own values. That's why here I have initialized roll number with 1, marks 90. Marks actually write 90.0F because it is declared with float. That's why marks is equal to 90.0F. Name is equal to Aniket. Okay. So this is the user defined NOR constructor. Inside this constructor, we are initializing the instance variables roll number, marks and name. Okay. After that, this display is same to display the values of each object. After that, this also same. Now take one more class inside that write main method and create 2 objects for student class. After that, on these 2 objects, invoke the display method. Okay, everything is same. Here, the difference between the previous program and this program is, in the previous program, the programmer has not provided the constructor. That's why the compiler provided the constructor, that is default constructor. Okay, but here in this program, the programmer is providing the constructor, that is NOR the constructor. Okay. Okay, now we will see the memory. So what is the memory for this? Again, first when you compile this program, first the compiler will check, okay, whether this student class contains any at least one constructor or not. But here when the compiler checks, here it identifies that one constructor is provided by the programmer. That's why compiler will not add any constructor to this class. Okay, that is the compilation time. Next, when you execute this program, execution starts from the main method. Then after that, the first statement is student S1 is equal to new student. So from this, okay, whenever you execute, okay, or whenever this statement is getting executed, compulsory one constructor must be executed. That is the thumb rule. Okay, so whenever this statement is getting executed, compulsory one constructor must be executed, whether it is default constructor or user defined constructor. Okay, and now in this case we will see which constructor is executed. So from this statement, the JVM goes to the student class and verifies for matching constructor. So this is the matching constructor. Okay, student noargs. Okay, so here in this case, JVM will execute this constructor. In the previous program, JVM executed the compiler generated constructor, but in this program, JVM executes this constructor, that is user defined nor constructor. Okay, and inside this, these are the values which are assigned to the instance variables of that class. Now we will see the memory, then you can understand more clearly. So whenever that statement is getting executed, inside the memory one object is created with some address, and the address of that object is assigned to this reference variable. So we are executing the first statement, that is student S1 is equal to new student. Here inside the memory, this is the scenario. I will explain this one. So whenever that statement is executed, one student object is created. Inside the student class object, the instance variables of that class are stored, and each and every object has unique address. That address is stored in the variable S1. Okay, and link is created. This is same. Next after that, so which constructor is executed in this second program is user defined nor constructor is executed. What is there inside that is roll number is assigned with 1, marks are assigned with 90.0, and name is assigned with Aniket. Okay, but here you have to remember one point, that is name is a reference variable and string is a predefined class. So that's why separate object is created for string object. This is separate object. Inside the student object, we can't store string object. Inside one object, we can't store one more object. That's why string is a predefined class. So and name is a reference variable. That's why, so outside the student class object, one more object is created for string class, and the address of this object is 50, and inside the name reference variable, that 50 is stored. Means link is created like this. Okay, so here we have two objects, one is student object, another one is string object. So inside the string object, Aniket is stored, and the address of the string object is stored in the reference variable name. So this is the memory for that first object, that is student S1 is equal to new student. Next, in the same way, next statement is student S2 is equal to new student. Again, it will go to the student class and it will execute the user defined nor constructor, which is the matching constructor. Now again we will see the memory. Again one more object is created and the reference variable is S2 and the address is stored here. Again, because the same constructor is executed now for the second object also, that's why the same values are stored. But here one difference is, here the string object is separate object with different address, and that address is stored in the reference variable to this name. Name is a reference variable which holds the address of the string object. Okay, that's why here only memory, these addresses are different. 150 here, here 220. That is the only difference. Otherwise, the same values are assigned to the instance variables of this object and instance variables of this object. So here in the second program, user-defined no-arg constructor is executed 2 times because we have created objects 2 times. Okay. So here how many objects are created? 2. That's why student S1 is equal to new student means same user-defined no-arg constructor is executed and the memory is allocated. And again, when you execute this statement, student S2 is equal to new student, here also from this it will go to the matching constructor, that is this constructor, which is user-defined no-arg constructor. That's why if you see the memory, both the objects are having the same values. Okay. Next, because the same constructor is executed. Next, after this, when you want to display S1 dot display, means on the first object, display method is executed. So display method is executed and roll number is 1. Inside the first object we have roll number is 1, marks 90.0 and name is Aniket. That's why when you print the values of roll number, marks and name, you will get the output for the first statement is roll number is 1, marks are 90.0 and name is Aniket. Okay, because on the first object we have invoked the method display. Next, if you invoke the display method on the second object, then again the display method is invoked on the second object and the values are printed like this. That is roll number is 1, marks are 90.0F and name is Aniket. Means you can understand that inside each object the same values are assigned to the instance variables if you use user-defined no-arg constructor. So this is the drawback of user-defined no-arg constructor. If you create 100 objects also for student class, inside each object only these 3 values are assigned to the instance variables. Okay, but it is not correct in the real-time scenarios. No, if you in your class, if you have 67 students, each and every student has his or her own roll number, marks and name. No, but if you use this user-defined no-arg constructor, all the students are assigned with the same values. So it is not correct. So that is the drawback of user-defined no-arg constructor. Why? Because it is assigning for all the objects with the same values. Okay. So to overcome this drawback, we will go for, see, when you see, if you see the output of the second program, roll number is 1, marks, name. This is for first student. Next, for the second student, if you observe, again roll number is 1, marks are same and the name is same. If you create 100 objects also, you will get the output for all the 100 students like this only, same values. Okay. So to overcome this drawback of this user-defined no-arg constructor, we will go for parameterized constructor. Now here each and every student is given different values using user-defined parameterized constructor. Now I will show you how to write the parameterized constructor and how to invoke the parameterized constructor. Okay, same concept, class, student, same. Next, now see this is user-defined parameterized constructor. If you see the user-defined, if you see the previous constructor, that is user-defined no-arg constructor, in that the constructor is not having parameters. That's why it is called no-arg constructor. But if you observe this constructor, here it is having parameters. That's why it is called user-defined parameterized constructor. How many parameters we will take is, here we have 3 instance variables now. That's why we have to take 3 parameters. Because the main purpose of constructor is to initialize the instance variables of that class. You remember this statement, I will repeat once again. So the main purpose of the constructor is to initialize the instance variables of that class. So this is a constructor. Why? Because the name of the class and the name of the constructor must be same and no return type and with parameters. So this constructor is written by the programmer. That's why it is called user-defined parameterized constructor. So what is the purpose of this constructor is, it will initialize the instance variables. Okay. So how it will initialize is, I will explain this one. Now, how do we write user-defined parameterizer constructor is student of, here we are initializing these three variables now. That's why I take these three variables as parameters for this constructor. So here what I will take is roll number is the first instance variable now. Here I will take the variable name as roll number 1, marks 1, name 1. I will use different names. I am not using the variable names and these instance variable names same. And now I am taking three different parameters, roll number 1, marks 1 and name 1. And you have to take the same data types. That's why here int, float and string. So this is the way of writing parameterizer constructor. Take the same instance variables here as parameters and take the same data types for these parameters. Okay. Next after that, the main purpose of constructor is to initialize the instance variables now. That's why always you should write these variables on the left hand side, because these are the variables which are initialized with values. That's why write the instance variables on the left side and write these variables in the right hand side. Okay, that's why roll number is assigned with roll number 1, marks is assigned with marks 1, name is assigned with name 1. So this is called user defined parameterizer constructor. This is the new concept in this class. Next after that, display method is same. Okay, so this class is completed. So here this is the beginning of student class. Here inside this we have state part which consists of three instance variables, and we have one constructor and we have one method. So constructor and method, these two come under behavior part. So this class, student class, consists of state part and behavior part. State part consists of three instance variables and behavior part consists of one constructor and one method, because constructors behave like methods only. See, both are doing the same thing. Inside the constructor we are doing some functionality. Inside the method also we are doing some functionality. Here for display method, this parenthesis missing, you put parenthesis, empty parenthesis. Okay, so if you want to explain this student class, how do we explain is, student class consists of two parts, state part and behavior part. State part consists of three instance variables. They are roll number, marks and name. And behavior part consists of one constructor and one method. Okay, this is regarding student class. This is closing brace for student class. After that, I want to access the members of the student class. So these are the members of the student class. Okay, so members are nothing but variables and methods. So how do I access the members of the student class is, inside the same class I can write the main method and I can create the objects for student class, or the other way is take one more separate class, inside that write the main method, inside the main method create the objects for student class. Why these objects are required for student class is to access the members of the student class. We need to create objects for student class. Now how I will create the objects here is, student S1 is equal to new student. Here in the previous two programs, that is default constructor and user defined constructor, there is empty parenthesis, because both are no-arg constructors. The default constructor is also no-arg constructor and the user defined no-arg constructor also no-arg constructor. That's why there I have used empty parenthesis. But here I am writing the program on parameterized constructor. That's why here I have to invoke this parameterized constructor. So how do I invoke the parameterized constructor is here like this. Okay, like methods only. When you write the method definition, you have to invoke that method now. Like that, here we have written the parameterized constructor. How do I invoke this parameterized constructor is by giving the values to these three variables or the parameters. So we should send the values to roll number 1, marks 1 and name 1 while invoking that constructor. So this is nothing but invocation of parameterized constructor. That's why inside this constructor or inside the parenthesis, I have to write 3 values. That is roll number is 1, roll number 1 is 1, marks and name. Name is always, we have to put in double quotes because it is a string. Okay. So here this is called parameterized constructor invocation. So while invoking the parameterized constructor, we need to give the values for the parameters. That's why I have written 3 values. Next we will see the execution part. Similarly, the second object, we will see the execution. So whenever we execute this program, the JVM will invoke the main method first. Inside the main method, first it will execute this statement. Whenever this statement is executed by the JVM, from this statement, the control goes to, or JVM goes to this matching constructor. See, I already explained now. This is important point to remember. Whenever you create an object like this, okay, at the time of executing the object, always one constructor must be executed, whether it is default constructor or user defined constructor. So here we are invoking the user defined parameterized constructor. Why? Because how the JVM will identify is using this class name. So using this class name, the JVM will go to the student class and it will verify whether matching constructor is provided by the programmer or not. Now based on this, it will go to the student class and it will search for the matching constructor. So this is the matching constructor. Why this is matching constructor is, it is having 3 parameters and types are int, float and string. And here also we have given the values like int, float and string. That's why the JVM will find that this is the matching constructor for that one. Now after that, what it will do is, here what are the values? 195.3 and Ramu. So these 3 values are assigned to roll number 1, marks 1 and name 1. Okay. Next, after that, after assigning those values to these 3 parameters, so this will be executed. Okay. What is there here? Roll number is 1. Already roll number holds 1. So this roll number 1 is assigned to this roll number, and marks, what are the marks? 95.3. Next, 95.3 is assigned to this marks, and name is Ramu. No? So first initially Ramu is stored in name 1, and that name 1 is assigned to name. Means name is also having Ramu. Okay. So 1 is assigned to roll number and 95.3 is assigned to marks. Ramu is assigned to name. So means this constructor is completed. Now when you execute the second statement also, again the same constructor will be executed, but here the instance variables are assigned with different values. When the statement is getting executed, again the JVM will search for the matching constructor and it found that this is the matching constructor. Again now here what are the new values for roll number, marks and name? 2, 98.9 and Krish. So these 3 values are assigned to roll number, marks and name when the second statement is getting executed. If you see the memory part is very, very important. Without memory, you can't understand Java programs. So for each program, you should draw the memory. Okay. Now this is the memory for the user-defined parameterized constructor. So first, when the first statement is getting executed, student object is created and the address is stored in this variable S1, and these 2 are linked. And what are the values of the instance variable roll number and mark? Roll number, marks and name is, roll number is assigned with 1 and marks 95.3F and name is Ramu. No? For Ramu, separate object is created because it is a predefined class. So separate object is created and the address of that object is stored in the reference variable name. Okay, link is created like this. Okay, so this is the scenario inside the memory for the first statement, that is student S1 is equal to new student of 1, 95.3, Ramu. Okay, Next, when the second object is executed, when the second statement is executed, again one more object is created for student in the memory, and the address is stored in the reference variable S2. After that, what are the values for the instance variables? 2, 98.7F, and the name is Krish. That's why for Krish, it is a string object, separate object is created and the address is stored here. This is the memory for the second object, and this is the memory for the first object. After that, what are the next two statements? S1 dot display and S2 dot display. So when you write S1 dot display on the first object, the display method is invoked and these values are printed using display method, because we are invoking the display method on the first object. That's why the output is roll number is 1, marks are 95.3 and name is Ramu for the first object, that is S1 dot display. Next, when you invoke the same display method on the second object, so what is the output? Output is roll number is 2, marks are 98.9 and name is Krish. Okay, so this is the output you will get when you execute the third program, that is the program using parameterized or user defined parameterized constructor. Okay, so here this is the program on user defined parameterized constructor. Using this user defined parameterized constructor, we are initializing the object. Initialization of an object is nothing but initialization of the instance variables. Here we are initializing the instance variables of this class using this constructor. Okay, all these programs are doing the same thing. Okay, we are initializing the instance variables or we are initializing the objects. So here, what is the difference between user-defined NOR constructor and user-defined parameterized constructor is, if you take user-defined constructor, all the objects the instance variables of all the objects are assigned with the same values. Means all students are assigned with the same values. Well, it is not correct. That's why to overcome that, we have to use user-defined parameterized constructor. With this, we are assigning different values to different students. So first student is assigned with these 3 values and second student is assigned with these 3 values. If you create third student, you can take different values. Roll number is 3. Like that, we can create any number of objects, but all the objects are the instance variables the instance variables of all the objects are assigned with different values. Okay, so it is the better way. Now, what is the fourth one is direct initialization. In the previous 3 programs, we have used constructors to initialize the objects. First one is default constructor, second is user-defined NOR constructor, third one is user-defined parameterized constructor. Now here, this is the fourth program, direct initialization. Direct initialization means, I will explain the difference. Class student. Now here we have 3 instance variables which are initialized with values. Means at the time of declaring the variables, we are initializing at the time of declaring the variables. Means at the time of declaring the instance variables, we are initializing with values. This is the difference here we can observe. In the previous 3 programs, only we have declared the variables, but we have not initialized the variables. But in this program, while declaring the instance variables, okay, we are initializing with values. This is nothing but direct initialization. Means at the time of declaring the instance variables, at that time only we are initializing with values. So okay, so here at the time of declaring the instance variables, we are initializing the instance variables. Okay, now we will see the flow. Now we will compile the program. Okay, during the compilation time, the compiler will check whether this class contains any constructor. But here in this class, the programmer has not written any constructor. See, this is the code. Here there is no constructor which is written by the programmer. In this case, if there is no constructor in the class, the compiler will provide default constructor, already explained in the first program. Okay? If there is no constructor in the class, then only the compiler will provide the default constructor for that class. So in this class, the compiler added this constructor during compilation time. So what is this constructor? You know, it is a default constructor. Already explained in the first program. Default constructor is nothing but the compiler will assign the default values to the instance variables. That is first program. Now understand the difference between the first program and this program. So this is also default constructor. In the first program also it is a default constructor. But the difference between the first program and this program is, in the first program I explained, that is, inside the default constructor, the compiler will provide default or will assign default values to the instance variables of that class based on the data type. Because roll number is integer data type, means roll number is assigned with 0. Okay. So in the first program, these instance variables are assigned with default values. Why? Because in the first program, we have not initialized the instance variables at the time of declaration. That's why the compiler will assign default values based on the data type. But here, the programmer has given values to the instance variables. Or all the instance variables are initialized with values by the programmer. So, whenever the compiler will provide a default constructor, at that time, first it will go to it will check these three variables, instance variables, whether the variables are initialized or not. If the variables are not initialized by the programmer, then the compiler will provide default values based on the data type. That is first program. But here, where the programmer, okay, the programmer has assigned values to the instance variables. In this case, the compiler will take these values only. That's why roll number is 10, marks is equal to 90.3F, and name is equal to Ramu. So before assigning the values to the instance variables, okay, first compiler will go and check whether these instance variables are initialized or not. If these are not initialized, then compiler will assign default values based on the data type for these instance variables. If these are initialized by the programmer, then the compiler will take those values and it will assign the same values to these three instance variables. Okay, this is called direct initialization. That is, it is nothing but at the time of declaring the instance variables, okay, we can initialize the instance variables with values. Okay, so the compiler will take the same values in this case. Otherwise, it will assign default values based on the data type. The remaining part is same only. The main method is executed by JVM. Whenever this statement is executed, it will go to the student class and it will execute the matching constructor. So this is the matching constructor. So inside the constructor, these instance variables are assigned the values like this. That's why we will see the memory. Second object also same. Okay, same constructor is executed for the second object also. Then when you see the memory part, the same values are assigned to both the objects. So here direct initialization, this is called. Direct initialization is nothing but at the time of declaration of the instance variables, we can initialize them. Okay. Now this is the memory for direct initialization. So if you see the first object, so these are the initialized values now, that is 298.7 and Krish. Okay. Next, this is for the first object. If you see the second object also, same constructor is executed now. That's why here it is, that is the previous object. So these are the two objects for this program, direct initialization. So if you see roll number is 10, marks 90.3 and name is Ramu. If you see the values for the second object also, because the same constructor is getting executed, that's why roll number same, marks same and name also same. So this program is direct initialization. Again the drawback is same. All the objects are assigned with the same values. If you initialize the instance variables at the time of declaration. Here same drawback now. See, all the students are assigned with roll number 10, marks 90.3 and name Ramu. Okay, it is not correct in real-time applications, but this is one way of initializing the object or objects. Next, what is the next program? All these programs are very, very important. Next program is copying the object. Now first we will create one object. After that we will assign the address of that object into the reference variable of second object. This is easy only. Means in this the both objects are having the same values. Now same program, same instance variable, same display method. See here also we have not written any constructor. See. In this class also there is no constructor. Means the programmer has not written any constructor. Only simply instance variables are declared and not initialized. See here. In the previous program, instance variables are initialized by the programmer, but here instance variables are not initialized by the programmer. This is one point to remember. And display method is same. And for this class we have not written. In this class there is no constructor, which is written by the programmer. Only instance variables and one method display, no constructor. Observe that one. Next, inside the main method, what I am doing is student S1 is equal to new student. I have created one object for student class. From this statement, the JVM will go to the student class and it will execute the student constructor. But here there is no constructor now. So in this case, compiler will provide a default constructor. Okay, you know default constructor now, student empty, no arg means empty parenthesis. Inside that it will assign the values to the instance variables. But how it will assign, already I explained in the previous program. First it will check whether the instance variables are initialized by the programmer or not. If the instance variables are initialized by the programmer, then it will take the same values to initialize the instance variables inside the default constructor. But here in this program, these instance variables are not initialized. That's why the compiler will provide default values to these three variables. That is roll number is 0, marks 0.0 and name is null. Null is the default value for any reference variable. Okay. So here default constructor is executed and assign default values to the three instance variables. Okay. So this statement is completed because default constructor is executed. Whenever this statement is executed, always one constructor must be executed. That is thumb rule. In any program, if you take any program in Java, whenever you create an object like this, compulsory one constructor must be executed, whether it is compiler generated constructor or user defined constructor. Okay. This statement is completed and the default constructor is executed. Okay. And the default values are assigned to the instance variables inside the object. That's it. Next, this second statement is important now. So student S2 is equal to S1. So here what will happen is, here inside S1, the address of this object is stored now. This right hand side is part is nothing but object. So each and every object has unique address. So that address, the address of this object is stored in the variable S1. Let us take S1 holds 100. So what is the meaning of this statement is S1 holds 100. That 100 is assigned to this S2. Means S2 is also holding 100. What does it mean? Both S1 and S2 are pointing to the same object. Okay. So S1 is holding 100. So similarly we are assigning S1 to S2. That's why S2 is also holding 100. The meaning of this is both are pointing to the same object because both are having the address 100. Means if you invoke display method on the first object, you will get default values, that is 0, 0.0 and null. Same S2 also pointing to the same object, no? That's why on the second object, if you invoke display method, it will also display the same values, because object is only one, but the same object is referred by two reference variables S1 and S2. Like that, one object can be pointed by or referred by any number of reference variables. This is one more concept. Like that, if I take student S3 is equal to S1, I can write. Student S4 is equal to S1, I can write. Then in that case, all the four reference variables are pointing to the same object. Means when you invoke display method on the first object and on the second object, you can find the same values for the two objects. I will show you the memory for this program. This is the memory for this, copying the object. Now here only one object. Now in the previous all the four programs, okay, for each object, for each statement, that is student S1 is equal to new student, the student S1, S2 is equal to new student, means two objects are created, because we are using new operator in both the statements. New is the operator which allocated memory dynamically during the runtime for each object. So in the previous programs, we have used new operator in each statement. That's why it creates separate memory for each object. That's why two objects are created in the previous programs. But here in the first statement only I have used new operator. That's why this object is created for the first statement. Student S1 is equal to new student. After that, here I have used the second statement as student S2 is equal to S1. See, in the second statement, I have not used new operator. That's why it will not, one more object is not created. Okay, whenever you write new operator, at that time only separate object is created. So in the second statement of this program, we have used student S2 is equal to S1. S1 means the address of S1. Here S1 holds 100. So we are assigning same value to S2 also. That's why S2 also holds 100. So here this is the object having the address 100. That's why S2 also points to the same object. Now on this object, if you invoke display method using S1.display, you will get these values. If you invoke like S2.display, you will get the same values. Means because both the objects are, both the reference variables are pointing to the same object. That's why output will be roll number is 1, roll number is 0, marks 0.0, name is null for the first student. Next, S2.display also gives the same output, that is roll number is 0, marks 0.0 and name is null. So with this 5 programs are completed. Next class we will see the remaining 3 programs. What are the remaining 3 programs? These 8 programs are very, very important. If you understand these 8 programs, the remaining part of Java is very, very easy. Till now we have completed default constructor, next user-defined no-OR constructor, user-defined parameterized constructor, and direct initialization, and copying the object. Okay. So these 5 programs we have completed. Next class we will see how to initialize the object using reference variables, and how to initialize the object using methods also. How to initialize the object using methods. So here the first 3 programs are how to initialize the object using constructors, and the last 2 programs are how to initialize the objects with methods. Again, in methods there are 2 types of methods. They are no-arg method and parameterized method. But in constructors there are 3 types of constructor. First one is compiler generated constructor. Second and third are user defined no-OR constructor and user defined parameterized constructor. So there are 3 types of constructors in Java we have. But if you take methods, there are only 2 types of methods. They are user defined no-arg method and user defined parameterized method. So we can initialize the objects either with constructors or with methods. Both are correct. But the main purpose of constructors is to initialize the objects. That's why generally we will use constructors to initialize the objects. Okay, so these are the 8 ways to initialize the objects. Next class I will complete the remaining 3 concepts, that is using methods also we can initialize the objects.